Good evening and welcome to this July 10th, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting of the Lake Bluff Village Board of Trustees. Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Cole?
Here.
Trustee Fisher?
Here.
Trustee Freed?
Here.
Trustee Hatch?
Here.
Trustee Rappin?
Here.
And Trustee Ryder?
Here.
Next on our agenda are the non-agenda items and visitors for public comment. The Committee of the Whole allocates 15 minutes during this item for those individuals who would like the opportunity to address the Committee of the Whole on any matter not listed on the agenda. Each person addressing the Committee of the Whole is asked to limit their comment to a maximum of 3 minutes. I do not see anybody here present. Do we have anybody online?
No, sir.
Moving on to general business. The Committee of the Whole will entertain requests from anyone present to modify the order of business to be conducted. And I see we have minutes and the continued discussion, so I don't believe we have a request tonight. Moving on to the consideration of the minutes from the July 26, 2023 Committee of the Whole meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes? There was,
One typo.
I read on page 3 a sentence that was making it countersens.
And the village attorneys, he was reporting about the policy, the case law, and it's too broad, should have had two TOO versus TO. So we'll make that correction.
Anything else? Thank you. Clerk,
Voice vote?
voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you, the motion passes. Next, item 4B is a continued discussion regarding LGBTQ+ Pride flag request.
So at the direction of you all from the last meeting, I put together a draft policy in the form of resolution, and it's in your packet. And there are at least 3 typos. Let me pull those up. But generally, it's a combination of the City of Des Plaines and the Village of Buffalo Grove's policy. I modified those policies to reflect where the village had not flown certain flags, with one exception, and this is totally up to you all how you want to put this in there, but I included in the the third recital a set of standards by which you can consider future requests, and the idea that in the future, if somebody or the village itself wanted to identify another flag or modify this policy, that would be done via resolution. And then the fourth recital includes firefighter memorial flag and the thin blue flag. That my intent was to remove those from the enumerated list under section 2 of the flag policy, and I failed to do so. Those are 2. And then on page 4 of that list, I did include, number 4 on that enumerated list. I said the official National League of Families POW MOA flag should be MIA, but I wanted to clarify that that flag has never been flown here either. But at the same time, I was trying to meld 2 policies and past practice together. The only other flag that the village has flown besides governmental flags has been the Chicago Bears flag. I did not include that.
Because it won't be necessary for a long time. So.
Oh, that's cruel. And Trustee Ryder did bring up the Cubs flag was not flown either. So that's probably worthwhile of a conversation as well. There is a little bit of language in here. I shouldn't say there is a little bit. There is language here that talks about, under item 5 of section 2 of the flag policy, talks about Lake Bluff department flags, which do not exist at this time, or flags associated with village recognition. And that had some flexibility that there'd be some conversations around, should that come to pass, that could be struck as well, because there's no such thing as this day and age, at this very moment in time. But The general goal was to give you all at least standards to have a conversation around what flags you wanted to include, because I think there was a desire to have that at the last meeting expressed. So that's there. Then I also attempted to list the flags I thought you may want to include, but again, that POW MIA flag, while a fine flag, it's never been flown here. Hasn't been requested, but unless it may be at some point. Same with the service flags. So, and we do not fly those at Veterans Day or Memorial Day either. We just fly American flags. So, I'm happy to answer any other questions about it. Peter's here as well, if there's any other questions regarding the Boston case or other related free speech issues. Oh, you did have one change, Peter. You said that there would be an amendment to the draft having to do with stating clearly that they were the village flags.
Right, I mean, we talked about this last time, the way to stay out of the Boston case situation and the losing the ability to pick and choose, for want of a better phrase. It's important that these are flags on village property, on village flagpoles, owned by the village. And I just would want to tweak some of the language to make that clear, subject to your approval. That was with the changes, I thought.
So our method for responding to future requests, which we may or may not get, but presume for a minute that we do, then does that come to the board and then a new resolution would be passed if we accepted those?
Yeah, it would come to the board, and then there would be an amendment to this to have an amended flag policy.
Resolution?
Resolution, excuse me. Yep.
And Peter, we can say yay or nay to any of those flags at our
Correct.
So do we have to have a rational basis for the distinction?
No, there wouldn't even be that test because this is government speech. So you wouldn't be justifying it under the First Amendment where you'd need a rational basis. This
Not
is,
under the First Amendment, but what about equal protection? And,
again,
Due process.
as long, yeah, it doesn't apply to the government.
well, it's state speech. We're speaking, right?
Right, we're speaking.
So isn't that state action?
It's state action, but it's, the doctrine of government speech says the government can choose how it wants to speak. Now, as I said, if we were to approve 50 flags of all different groups, and then one group came in and we said no, there is, I think, at some point, for example, if we start getting requests for flags, and we say, yes, 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 and we start saying, and we keep amending this and keep it, and then all of a sudden and then we say no, there is at some point where it doesn't feel like government speech anymore. It feels like people are starting to use our flagpole. We're always saying yes, so it's starting to act like a public forum. And once it starts to act like a public forum, then somebody's going to have an argument that, okay, it's a public forum, you don't get to pick and choose anymore. This is a pretty narrow list of flags, so I don't think there's a risk of that. But there is a risk, again, if it went on and on and on and on, the example I just gave.
So I have a question on that because that's a difficulty I had on our last meeting. Yes, it's a narrow list. Where does the distinction apply where we approve two flags in a row? Two flags, a blue one and a purple one, and somebody comes with a green one. And that green one could say, well, you guys approve the last two, so how come not mine? Where does that number apply? As you say, it goes on and goes on and goes on. Two might be already, it goes on.
So there's no line. I mean, there is no hard and fast line. A court will look and see, is this starting to look like the public square where you say yes to everybody and then you say no to one person? That's different than what this resolution does. This resolution, you have initiated this. You're saying these are the flags we want, and if 10 years from now somebody comes and wants another flag and you say, yes, we, the government, want to support that, we want to buy the flag, we want it on our flagpole, I'm confident that continues to be government speech. But at some point, if there's 50 of them and you always say yes, it starts not to look like government speech. It starts to look like a public forum where people have the right to have free speech.
My real hesitation, and I do follow you, my real hesitation is on the number, 2 versus 50.
There's no case that says it has to be one or the other.
Got it.
And it's all the factors. I mean, the Boston case was the worst facts. It was people would apply, they would always get approved. It was their flags that were being flown on the city flagpole. So you had all sorts of things, and the court said, no, you can't. Like, you've opened it up. This resolution, I don't believe, opens it up. At some point, if it goes on and on and on and on and on, it will be opened up. But I can't identify what that number is.
Thank you for distinction.
I'm happy to chime in and start the conversation. You know, to me, diversity and inclusion is a really important part of the fabric of Lake Bluff, even though, you know, in my opinion, Lake Bluff is kind of an understated community, and I'd be proud to have a pride flag on my personal flagpole. I get a little bit, I'm less concerned about the legal, you know, piece, which I am concerned about it, but that Peter's talking about. What I'm most concerned about is the equitable portion of asks. So if we approve this flag, but there's many other, you know, protected classes, there's plenty of other heritage months. They all have flags, none of them is recognizable as the pride flag, of course. And I just don't want to be the arbiter of making the decision of which ones we will do and which ones we don't, if they're all worthy. So I have a little bit of concern about that, about it being equitable. I don't, you know, but I'm interested in what everybody else has to say about that.
I'll just chime in and say that you put in words sort of what I've been struggling with a little bit. And the example I've just hit upon is the dispute elsewhere with a particular heritage wants their flag flown. And we say, oh, but we don't own a Swedish heritage flag, so we can't fly that. And they say, this hypothetical person says, but we'd really like you to post this Swedish American flag or heritage flag, and you should buy one. You bought one over here, you should acquire one. And we say, no, we don't have an interest in recognizing that particular group. Ask again. And so the Norwegians come and they ask us for their flag. And we say, oh, yeah, you know what? Yeah, let's go ahead and buy a Norwegian flag. I don't know. That's what I'm sort of struggling with. And I appreciate that the path that all of these examples are sort of silly examples, but I'm just trying to figure out how we adjudicate these going forward, which is where I started. I'm happy to hear other people tell me that I'm, you know, misguided here in my concern.
Thank you. I'm curious to hear the board on this subject.
I think that there's a way to distinguish between the various cultural flags and the pride flag. I think that it represents a different cohort of the community, and I think it represents a larger portion of the community that, you know, touches each swath of different cultures and represents different people and kind of hits everybody. Whereas I think the other examples may be a little bit more narrowly tailored and may present more of the same issues because, right, I'm looking at a lot of these municipalities and a lot of them don't fly the pride flag, right, surprisingly. And that's an easy out, I think, to say that we're only gonna fly the US flag, the Winnetka flag, your village flag, and the state of Illinois flag. I think that there's an opportunity to be able to distinguish between the pride flag and flags of other feathers.
Thank you.
So, hi, briefly. I agree with Ms. Hatch's position, but at the same time, then what's that criteria, the distinguishing that we just made between the cultural issue and, I mean, because arguably there are two cultural concepts we're touching on. One, for instance, like with the pride flag, that's irrespective of, you know, if we're gonna use the example of like Swedish Day or, you know, whatever type of cultural flag we're talking about. So that criteria being that it touches all types, right, like of countries in that example, but I don't know, then do we need to come up with something, a mission, or do we need additional criteria that helps us figure out going forward when a flag meets that criteria? Like, is it an inclusiveness issue? Is it a, you know, are there parameters? Because then whatever board comes after us might be stuck making this decision when it's a bit harder, when we're not all in agreement.
I attempted to do that in the third recital, to give you guys tools to do that.
Yeah. It, just as I was doing my research, maybe just to throw it out, you know, there certainly there throughout the year are heritage, there's, you know, Black Awareness Month, there's Women's Awareness Month, there's the Pride Flag, there's mental illness awareness, there's all the protected classes. So it may not just be a nationality, it may be some of these other protected
Right.
classes. And that's a line that we would have to make decisions on.
And for the record, I'm in support of the pride flag generally, but I do think it does potentially, like you said, open up more complicated discussions for other flags maybe going forward.
I don't think the goal is to avoid complicated discussions, though. You know, I'm sort of like, okay, let's have some discussions. Because maybe there is another flag that is brought that we as a board or a future board feels would be important for the village to purchase a flag and incorporate it. I don't think the board needs to create a policy that safeguards us from discomfort in future discussions. We just have to be prepared to say no. And I mean, that's part of this job. I think the pride flag is uniquely focused on right now because it's an issue, and it's a national recognized issue. So when we talk about other cultural flags, yes, I mean, we want to be inclusive and we want to show that we welcome all of our neighbors from all walks of life, but specifically, we're here talking about pride because never before have we had the opportunity to have open discussions about the way this community, not Lake Bluff as a community, but this specific demographic of Americans are impacted. And the purpose of Pride Month is to literally say, you're welcome. You are here. We are welcoming you. And we do that through visuals. So, you know, yes, Swedish Americans are welcome here, but they are not impacted in this country the same way as people who may feel warmth and welcome and safe in our community when they see a pride flag. I'd be curious, I really appreciated the chart. I'd be curious to see what Highwood is doing and how they, what is their policy. I think Northfield has a policy as well, and it might be super restrictive, because I remember a similar discussion a few years back. And I know they ultimately ended up flying a pride flag, so I'd be curious what steps they've taken as well.
Thank you. I would like to go back to, thank you for your comment, and I think this is important. Either supplement your comment or buttress your comment or add to your comment. If we look at the third recital and to Drew's point, as a consideration, as a distinction to know what flag we should consider, we have public good, we have unity, we have importance of the village, we have a few keywords in those 4 or 5 subpoints. There's still another point to add to recognize, that is the Lake Bluff 2023 strategic plan states on page 3, that was what I said 2 weeks ago, that the guiding principles that in Lake Bluff we will, and point number 4, be inclusive, welcoming, and open-minded. Okay, We have an issue of people not being sure if they want to be inclusive those days. And maybe we are, during that month of June, we want people to be inclusive. And guess what? June is the month of being inclusive with LGBTQ. And I'm not making fun because this is really what it is. But at the end of the day, we make a statement, not so much a political statement, but an inclusion statement that is, you're welcome and you're safe, because this is what I hear. We want to see if I am gay and I walk into a community, I want to see if I will be welcomed to be in this community. And I think this is the point. And I think in between those two statements from the village already existing, we are actually supporting what we said in our strategic plan. What do you guys think?
Drew, you were going to add something. I was curious what you were going to say. It's gone now?
No, one thing, you all, for better or worse, have the luxury of time, right? You've got a little less than a year, but it's enough time. So I was mad at myself for not having Highwater Northfield part of the survey. We can get that data. We can get more. If you have others you want to see, we can certainly get those as well. One of the other things too that like Wilmette and some other communities have other sites or venue that are village controlled, but they're not on, they're like parks or other properties where they can control and have alternative locations to place flags to achieve these types of objectives, but aren't necessarily on the village flagpoles where government flags have only historically been flown. So we talked about different scenarios or situations internally, some and come up with an elegant one. The village's light poles, our standards in the downtown area, are small and historic looking by design and low scale. We used to have banners on those, but stopped because people were getting injured by them. They were walking into them, and
I don't mean, that was an inappropriate
it happened.
response.
And
Yeah.
so and that was they're not designed for that, right? Some of these, I think Wilmette has, and other like Evanston has much taller street standards where you can take advantage of that height. We don't. But there's other ways and different locations to do the same. It doesn't have to be on the village-owned, the 3 flagpoles. But so again, you have a lot of time. So I don't feel compelled to decide this evening.
I just want to say I agree with Trustee Fisher that I think it's manageable, the dialogue that we would have
Yeah.
going forward on any future flags. I noted that this proposed having the rainbow flag for the entire month of June, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but I also noted in your chart that there's several communities that have the Juneteenth flag as well, which is another federal holiday, and is one that we could certainly recognize as well as an inclusive and not politically divisive, issue. So I just wanted to raise that too, because I also saw, I'm not sure which one it was, one of the other community policies talks about, 2 flags and, when you fly one above the other and what the order is, et cetera. So we just maybe want to consider whether you want to have additional framework at this time, or maybe it comes later if we decide we need that. But
Yeah.
that June conflict or, issue came up when I saw Juneteenth, and I think it's
Right.
one that probably could apply here as well.
There is actually a code and a standard for flying flags in the United States, and I was exposed to that with
Scouts.
Lake Bluff Yacht Club, where the flags of, this is an exception, the flags of the United States is not at the top in that case. And so you have a main flag, main mast and 2 masts, and the United States is on the right, I believe. And so there's a standard. We should maybe reflect to that standard to see what is the commonality for that standard is, if that helps.
And there's another added practical element is the tallest flagpole the village owns is on the village green. You could fly probably up to 3 flags on that, Jake, safely. Yeah, but like we've tried to fly the village flag, the state flag, and the U.S. flag on these other poles, and they're short. You just it looks odd. So there's some practical limitations as well.
So Drew, you could get us some additional information on those two other municipalities. I'm totally in agreement about Juneteenth. We might want to expand this conversation. And also about the protocol of an order of flying flags. That would be, I think it would be helpful for me. And, oh, and other locations and options, yeah.
I was going to say in paragraph 7 on this last page, we specify 1 month, and I think trustee Fried raises a good point. You know, I would seek to add Juneteenth. If we're going to pass this, I would probably propose we pass it with Juneteenth recognized as the flag, rather than put it off and wait for somebody to ask. Which better do that now than later.
So what you're saying is, as a policy, we include that flag, but as an implementation standpoint, you can decide about that later on. The implementation being, how do we fly those flags together? And that might be a more practical item that might be decided later on.
I also had a question about number 6. Do we own the service flags of all Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines? So we're proposing through this to obtain those? Or because that's taking on an additional responsibility in paragraph 6.
Yeah, and Jake, again, for Veterans Day or Memorial Day, we've never flown those on the village, just American flag. So you could.
Closest thing was the Bears flag.
Right. So we could strike those from now, or you can add them, like, have them on the list, but when you choose to fly them, you could fly it,
I guess what I'm saying is that I think it requires more study. I certainly would not vote against this, but I think there are ways in which we could improve it and head off some of these issues before they arise, and take on our newest national holiday as really one that we really do need to address sooner than later.
That was kind of my comment last time, was we kind of need to look at this holistically, right? We're sitting in this meeting and it was Pride, Juneteenth, right? My company takes the holiday of Juneteenth off. I think we need to look at this holistically, not just, those two groups. So I don't know what the other recommendations are, but whatever it is, it should be comprehensive.
There might be a guidance also looking at Highwood, where during June there is scores of flags around the city, but I don't notice other events, or not too many other events where we have the whole city with a single flag being displayed. So maybe they have framed their flag policy to be in a way that could help us analyze what's happening here. Drew, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's lots of, we can certainly get more information. We'll add in Highwood, Northfield. I'm not sure Highwood has a policy. Somehow I think they don't, but they certainly have they're doing on the large
Practice?
flag. They have the street lamps that are larger, and they're using the
Right,
banners.
they do the banners.
Yeah, like Wilmette does. Yeah, I can think, if we're limited to the exact locations we have today, we can actually put together a plan, say this is the cycle. Like, here's a 12-month cycle, this is what it would look like, we could do that. If there's going to be other locations and other options that may require, design build, a different location, I don't know if you want to go that far.
What was the proposal? Was it one flag at Village Hall, or was it all of the flags that you have in that map?
I think Village Hall, you can probably get away with 2 flags on the height of that pole, and then 3 on the green. And that's usually, it's been US, state, village, and then even on these flags, it's been US flag, village. No offense to the state of Illinois.
So the one flagpole that we're talking about is the one on the Village Green?
Correct. That is the tallest pole that we have.
Yeah, because we have like 12 flagpoles.
PSD can't handle a second flag because it hits the tree. It can only
I was about to ask, yeah. So
Yeah.
the public safety building flies the American flag, US flag,
Yep.
and that doesn't ever
That's-
shift.
No.
I also noted that our draft policy references the rainbow pride flag, and there's several communities that use the progress pride flag, which is a slightly different
Is that the one with the
flag.
V? Yes.
So I don't, that might not have been intentional, but we might need to decide too, kind of which flag
Good point.
we're raising here.
I was told there's a standard, so I believe that we start with the word rainbow, but we can modulate that at the end to actually make it as inclusive as possible.
Fantastic.
Yep. So it sounds like we have a couple of hurdles in front of us that are, what holidays should we recognize, include those holidays, practically how we're gonna fly, how do we recognize conflicts, Juneteenth and Pride Month, for example, what holidays should we recognize, what flags, practically what flagpole in the village will be able to accommodate the different flags. And I believe that includes flexibility in the implementation and some rigor in the list of flags fitting Peter's distinction for free speech, government free speech. That's where we are, I believe.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to clarify, we're not, I mean, I'm looking at 15 flagpoles in the village. So whether it's a pride flag or a Juneteenth flag, the American flag we fly. We're talking about a pole position, not replacing the American flag with 12 of whatever flag it is for an entire month, right? We're not decorating the entire village, or, I guess I'm asking.
Are we? I mean, I think there's a discussion.
Yeah.
Because the flags that go up and down
Scranton.
Scranton each have the American flag? Is that what your question is, Steve?
Yeah.
They each have an American flag
I
all
don't
year
know
long?
what they currently have and what they can accommodate, and
Right.
whether we were bumping the American flag for whatever flag.
So on certain holidays, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, there have been individual American flags placed in holes in the sidewalk along East Scranton and by the War Memorial. And then during, so that's any Flag Day, those go out and so forth. The only other flags that have been placed in those on East Scranton have been the Lake Forest High School flag for graduation and for homecoming.
Everything down Scranton, that's not permanent.
That is correct. Those are just for those weekend or days. And those have actually placed by volunteers, not village staff.
Oh,
That has been the Veterans Group who've done it, and Rotary now, since many of those veterans have passed. But the Rotary's continued that for the flags along East Scranton. We're doing all those? Yeah. Okay, well, they're putting them in Lake Forest, I know that much. But so you're putting those, Jake? Okay. And then Lake Forest High School flags put on by the boosters.
Boosters, and then for homecoming, you get assigned for it for football.
Yeah,
okay, so we are doing.
the flags.
See, I like that, and where I was sort of headed is, that does make our job easier if we, for instance, Highland Park's list, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, Juneteenth, and Pride, those are federal holidays. It's easy peasy, we are acknowledging these federal holidays. So if we're doing Memorial Day and Veterans Day, all the better. I'm not opposed to, I mean, I think that's the easier discussion, how many flags, and do we do, the first week of June, the whole boulevard, or do we do just one flag? And we just ease ourselves into it. So I definitely would like to know how Highland Park and Evanston do it, since they both recognize
Sure,
Juneteenth.
right, yeah.
Well, I guess additional research is necessary. And I believe that we'll be back on this subject in a couple of weeks or in a
when the plan is ready.
future committee of the whole meeting. Do we have more thoughts on the board before we adjourn? Well,
And if you're happen to be out and about traveling and see some clever, please let me know.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
all right. Could I please have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. And we're adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank
All
you.
those in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I guess my request for Britain